It's a journey, not a destination. So every little step, and we want to go step by step. We're not going to start with a full body orgasm. We first want to create safety. We want to create safety and connection. And that starts with asking your partner a question. Hey, how are you feeling today? Where are you at? What's alive for you? And then a second question would be, what are your desires for our intimacy session or for our time tonight together? What is that you want? What is that your desire? What would be ideal if you can choose how we can spend the next hour? And then both partners can share where they are at and what their desires are.
Life is all about relationships. Lovers, family, body, or money. How satisfied you are can be completely explained by how you relate to things around you. This is Sophie Jaffe, and together with my husband, Dr. Adi Jaffe, we are here to explore and teach you how to maximize your relationships and achieve a happier life. Let's get ignited. From the moment I wake up till the instant I go to sleep, as most of you know, my day is crazy full. I often share my schedules on good old Instagram, but for those of you who don't know, I am running 3 inspiring businesses. I have 3 gorgeous children running around the house constantly. And in between helping them with school, creating alone time with the D, and also carving out some solo soul time for myself, there is basically no room left in the day for anything else. I really do know how it feels when I load up on unhealthy foods, and it's not a great look. I don't have time to stress about these added fillers or sugars or whether my food will actually make me and my family feel good and be nutritious. And that's what I love about Philosophy Superfoods and why I started this company. I know that they are trustworthy, that they are packed with high-vibe antioxidants, minerals, adaptogens that all help me deal with what the world throws at me each day. I love my life. I love my children and my jobs, and I want to be able to really thrive in all of these things and put on a bunch of different hats and roll with the punches. And Philosophy Superfoods really allows me and supports me in wearing all those hats. If you would like to stock up on our Philosophy Superfoods, which are always organic, raw, incredibly sourced nutrients, use the code IGNITED, that's IGNTD, to stock up for you and your loved ones. You and your body will feel so grateful for it.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to this episode of the Ignited Relationships Podcast. I'm Adi Jaffe.
And I'm Sophie Jaffe.
And we are here today with you for a special episode on sex.
On intimacy, sex. I mean, really, yes, sex is like the end goal, but the intimacy is really what we talk about in this episode. We talk about tantra sex, and we have Bibi as a guest who we met in Tulum on a magical trip this summer. After months and months of being in quarantine, we decided to take a trip because we couldn't go to Israel, and we went to Tulum, which is my happy place. I've taught a lot of yoga retreats there because it's such a spiritual vortex and beautiful, of course, right on the ocean and in the jungle as well. And we met Bibi at a workshop, and we did a 3-hour, one of our mutual friends, Mickey, actually said, you've got to meet this woman. And so we met up with her and fell in love, and we did a 3-hour drop-in.
Yeah, we didn't meet her in another work. We were the workshop. She did one with us. It was incredible.
Insane. It just blew our minds, and we immediately said, would you mind coming on our podcast? We would love to share all the wisdom that you have with our listeners.
Yeah, look, we've spent over 10 years exploring, learning, growing together as a couple. You've been hearing about a lot of that work here. And so working with coaches and experts is how we do it. And today's Ignited podcast is to bring the special charge that Bibi has to you without having to fly to Tulum and do a 3-hour private workshop.
Yep, and she really committed to us and showed up for us and kept staying on us to make sure that this episode came out and that we made it happen because we could feel the magic between us and what came through. We talk a lot about how to connect in this episode to love and how to connect to both emotional and psychological and physical and sexual intimacy.
Yeah, and in the spirit of sex, we definitely talk about sexual pleasure and how to feel fulfilled through sex.
We also connect to becoming more aware and conscious on the journey and what that did for her and her journey in general.
Yeah, because she shares her story of how she got from working a corporate job for 15 years in New York in finance to this world after meaningless sex and partying and alcohol. It's an incredible story. I don't want to give it away. You're going to love, love, love this episode. As usual, we try to fill this thing up with tips. So pay attention, and we love if you could just screenshot some of these things, tag us, tag Bibi, tag Ignited, and let us know what resonated from you. Or, if you're really, really brave, let us know one of these things that you tried to put into practice and how it worked out.
We love you all. Here we go.
Well, great. How are you doing?
I'm doing very well. It's been busy. A lot of things happening, but yeah, doing very well.
Yeah, well, you're in a healing mecca. You're in a place where people are coming to get well, and to feel things again. Yeah,
and to kind of, it became a total hotspot / vortex / a very interesting place in the world, which is interesting to see and very powerful. A lot of interesting people coming together. I kind of say that this pandemic amplifies everything. So it amplified the good and they amplified the bad. And there is more party, there's more of all kind of things, but there's also more healing, more events, and more interesting people coming. So that's where we at here in Tulum right now.
Yeah, it's beautiful. I mean, we came in July and that's when we met you and fell in love with you. And we ourselves, my whole party, my whole family that came, we all had up-leveling that happened and, and magical experiences. We had a 3-hour workshop with you and I just feel like all of us had an experience that, like, that's why I come to Tulum and why I have for a decade, is because I know what I'm going to get.
Yeah, beautiful. I love those kind of tourism, conscious tourism and conscious visitors, curious conscious visitors.
Yeah, it's very healing. So glad you're there to welcome people in. And a couple of my friends were just with you this past week and I'm sure took wonderful care of them.
Yes, we had a very powerful retreat for 39 women. And it was really, really next level. It's interesting because in times like this, those retreats are even more needed. And it was just really impressive to see how quickly the women dropped in, how quickly they opened up and shed their masks. So yeah, transformational times we are in.
Big time.
Yeah. And I mean, even this episode itself, we've been kind of trying to put together for the last few months. Obviously the world is in such a bizarre state, and kind of the ups and downs and the tumultuous times that we're living in. That's why we've really wanted to put this out, because this concept of how to connect to love and how to connect to intimacy is something I think is even harder for a lot of people right now than it even would have been a year ago if we had this conversation. And we want, the goal of this podcast is to bring people healing tools. And what we found is a lot of that healing that people are looking for is around intimacy, emotional, psychological intimacy, but then also physical, sexual intimacy.
Absolutely. And it's interesting to observe because during this lockdown pandemic, I actually, it's beautiful to see, but my business has been thriving. And it's interesting when we are stripped from all the kind of distractions, all the bars and the shopping and the traveling and events, and we are really left with a partner, sometimes 24/7. It's interesting because things come up and there is no way to run away. There's no way to kind of avoid facing what's coming up. And it's a beautiful opportunity. So a lot of couples that maybe before were not so open to work with a coach or with a trainer or however you want to call it, are now opening up to that. And that to me is beautiful. And that's what we can take out of this pandemic. It can be a portal for growth.
100%.
An invitation to do more work.
100%. So Sophie mentioned that we had done a workshop with you, and we're going to get into the nuances of this a lot more. But what I would love is actually I want you to describe, because you told us this during this 3-hour workshop, and I really want people to sink in to the journey and the difference between your old way of living and the old way that you connected intimately, but also specifically physically, and how now that's transformed into a different level of fulfillment, sexual pleasure, and everything that comes along with the coaching and the teaching that you do.
The awakening.
The awakening. My awakening is a bit of a big word, but definitely, becoming more aware and conscious on the journey. But, I share a story that a lot of listeners definitely are going to resonate with, because that's the story of my generation, is that I was going after all the things that promised a lot of money and a successful career, which was, defined by flying around the world and having big bonuses and all this kind of stuff, right? And having a lot of company perks. And I grew up in communism. So for me, it was even more important to have that ability to travel and pay my bills and live the life that my parents couldn't live, for example. So I studied finance and banking, never really passionate about it, but that definitely promised the best career options. So I've done 3 masters, actually. That's how deep I went into it. And worked in corporate world for 15 years. And, it was fun. It was a lot of fun. I was never fulfilled. I never really asked myself what my purpose is, because I was always too busy running to the next thing. And the moments that I kind of had some doubts or that little questioning creeped in, I would immediately cover it up with a next trip, or, Ibiza opening, or Halloween somewhere, or Miami or Basel. And it's like, it's like this constant adrenaline chasing in a way, right? It's Christmas every day. And so that is a great way to cover up or things that are not working. So was it compulsive traveling, shopping, a lot of casual, meaningless sex, a lot of partying, alcohol, all these kind of things. Worked for a while till it stopped. And the moment it stopped working, it kind of was quite overwhelming and really brought me to a midlife crisis, or however you want to call it. I wouldn't say I was depressed, but I was on the verge of, it was first time that I was really off and down in my life. And all those things stopped working. And I really asked myself, okay, so what is it that I want? What's my purpose in life? What's my mission? What am I doing here? I'm not getting any younger. I don't like my life. I don't like my job. I don't like where I live. I used to live at that moment. I lived in São Paulo in Brazil. It was not my place. And asked myself all these questions and had no answers. And it was quite overwhelming. But again, for me, every difficult moment in life is a portal for growth. And deep in my heart back then, I knew that I'm going to come out stronger out of it. I quit my job and I embarked on my personal growth journey and done all kind of things, from going to India to Osho Ashram, Vipassana meditation, landmark, all kind of types of medicinal plants, ayahuasca, San Pedro, peyote, you name it. I dated a life coach. That was actually a thing in itself, and done really positive psychology seminars, read tons of books and done a lot of different things. And I always say that one of the kind of the milestones on the journey that was really, really important was what I refer to as a sexual awakening. And that was like another level on this journey when kind of the whole new universe opened up. But yeah, let's see if that was if that answered your question.
It started answering it because it got us to the level of dissatisfaction that I think so many people can relate to, where you kind of give up on purpose and really feeling fulfilled. And you say, well, I have enough money. The car is nice. I live in a nice house. Look at the vacations we take. Maybe this is as good as it gets.
I should be happy.
Yeah. And for you, maybe it got bad. Not maybe, it got bad enough where you said, you know what, screw that. I got to go find something else. And I'm hearing you went deep. I mean, you used a lot of examples, but a lot of the examples a lot of people might have heard of, right? And so you went in deep to try to understand what the answers were, but you kind of teased us there at the end, and maybe that's purposeful because we're talking about sex. I don't know, but one of the places that you found this connection, and I think the reason we wanted to bring you on is, look, this is the shit most people don't talk about, is this sexual awakening as a way of a deeper connection versus the sex for the haphazard, like one night stand or watching porn, like all the stuff that we know exists. This is a different level of a sexual connection that you got to, and that awakening you mentioned. So let's talk more about that.
So yes. So yeah, it kind of meets all together, the sexuality and the purpose. Yeah, so I'm going to tie it all together. So just to finish off then from the previous question, I kind of realized I was always a trendsetter. And I was always kind of, a little bit of an outsider doing my own thing, not what everyone else was doing. So already back then when I started with my ayahuasca trips and meditations, I was already kind of, in my crowds, not many people were doing it. And once they started to see a change in me, and once I also started to kind of radiate different type of energy, I realized that I'm inspiring people around me. Okay, so that was already a first kind of hint that I have this capacity to inspire people, and they somehow listen to me and look up to me. And I knew that there's something around the purpose is around being of service and inspiring others. And then, kind of when you start on this journey and you start scratching the surface, you start scratching the surface in every area of your life. So was it sustainability? Is it conscious fashion? Is it nutrition? And then sexuality came as next, right? And when for the first time, I lived in New York. So I always tell the story on my workshops. I lived in New York. It was Sex and the City time. I worked in finance, and I kind of lived the Sex and the City. I was something around between Samantha and Carrie, but more around Samantha. And there was a lot of casual sex. Sex was fun, entertainment, and there was a lot of one-night stands that were, if I can really name one that was heart-blowing, that stayed with me till today, that kind of shook my soul, there wasn't any in this time, and there was a lot of disappointments. There was a lot of a man who wouldn't call me back. There was a lot of kind of feeling empty and disrespected, although it was not the man's fault, because that's how I attracted men in first place, being in bars or being drunk late at night in the club, right? So that's the type of dynamic you attract. And when I kind of first experienced full body orgasm or energy moving, sexual energy moving through me, it was so profound. And lucky enough, in the workshop that I was with, there was actually a man who had a similar experience. And we met up that night. And there was really, we just started kissing, basically. We were kissing in our clothing. And the energy was activated, and it started moving through us. And we were experiencing those full body orgasms, the energy exchange. That was first time for both of us. We didn't even know exactly what was going on. But it was so deep. It was so intimate. It was so profound that we both were really impacted by this. And we started dating for a couple of months and experimenting. And that's where I kind of started experiencing energy sex or conscious sex, or however you want to refer to the energy. I call it energetic lovemaking. And just everything changed. I became radiant. Everyone was asking me, what have I done? Everyone was telling me I look younger. Everyone was asking me, what drugs are you on? People could perceive it. They didn't know exactly what it is, but everyone could perceive a change in me. And I was so excited about what was happening. And I am very enthusiastic. So as soon as I'm really experiencing something amazing, first thing I want to do is share. So it all started with me sharing with all my friends. Listen, have you heard about the full body orgasm? Do you know that you can start shaking and the energy moves? And just started talking about it nonstop, basically, because that's what a profound effect it had on me. And people started coming back with stories. Listen, after you told us about the full body orgasm, after you told us about shaking and this and that, it actually happened for us last night.
Wow.
And that was like, okay, interesting. Just from talking and planting seeds, something's happening. Yeah. So that's how it all.
Yeah. Do you feel like it's because you were ready to let go that you were able to attract that and experience that and really sink into that emotion and that feeling?
You know what? Definitely. Like, the timing is everything. And if I would end up in this workshop 3 years ago, it probably wouldn't have an impact on me that it had at that time.
Yeah.
I was definitely ready. I've done Vipassana meditation, which I find super helpful on this journey. I was already meditating for a while. I was really sensitive I was sensible enough to kind of feel energy and subtle sensations. So I really, let go on and surrendered and had a really powerful experience on that workshop.
And it sounds like you were calling in that experience. You were calling in something that really shook you to your core. Look at the work you were doing. I mean, Vipassana is a 10-day meditation. For anyone that's listening, it's a very extreme meditation. Like, I've done a silent 2-day retreat. I've gone on silent experiences. I've gone on a 7-day yoga retreat, but to sit in meditation for 10 solid days it's really a feat. It's really something to be, you were looking for something that shook you to your core.
Yeah. And I am a yes person in life. I am curious. Learning and growing is kind of what I thrive on.
Same.
And I am like you guys, right? If you experience a workshop, I'm always a yes. I'm always open. So I think, when you are in this open, receptive state of curiosity and you are ready for it, then it comes.
Yeah. And so I think this is an important thing to touch on for everybody listening. Being open alone kind of means letting your guard down and being ready for experiences before you really know whether you're going to love them, what they're going to actually feel like, right? There's a preparation for the learning. There's a preparation for the experience. And so we know some of these issues, but I just want to read off some of the things that you guys out there have reached out to us about, not only in the context of cheating and porn and people struggling in the relationship, but just intimacy and sex. And we live in a pretty puritanical society. So, people having a hard time having sex with the lights on and really looking at each other and being intimate and connecting, not being able to have orgasms together. So like we've heard from different listeners telling us, I can orgasm by myself, like the woman maybe, or the man telling us, I can orgasm by myself. But when I'm with a partner, I have this performance issue. I don't feel comfortable. My partner's been doing this thing. They've been doing it for years. I freaking hate it. I don't love it. And I don't understand. I don't know how to tell them. I feel like I don't want to reject them and they might leave me if I talk to them about it. There are all these different things, right? Especially when it gets to anything outside of, well, I'm going to put this in air quotes for those who can't see what I'm doing right now, like the sexual norms, right? Anything that is outside of that, people feel so scared to even bring it up because the fear of rejection and the shame that comes around it is so massive. So that story you were talking about and meeting this guy in this workshop, obviously both people had to come to that place ready, but then be ready enough in the workshop to actually absorb the teachings and the energy, and then be connected enough and ready to be vulnerable enough to say, hey, I really kind of like this experience, sort of attracted to you. You want to go try this out?
Yeah.
It's like there's all these little hurdles on the way to just absolute pleasure. And the crazy thing about it, I want you to talk about what you do with people now based on the learnings you've done, because we all want that pleasure. Most people listening right now, if you pause for a split second and you're honest with yourself, a full body orgasm that makes you shake and you can have it like 12 times in a night sounds really fucking nice. But we're not always ready to take all the steps along the way to get to a place where we're vulnerable enough. So I'd love for you to tell our people, what does that look like? What's the process like? We went through a workshop with you, but I want them to hear from you. Yeah.
No, and all the things that you mentioned, they are quite typical for couples in our society, because let's be honest about it. There is no education about how to have a relationship, how to be with a partner for a long period of time, right? So all these things we have to kind of figure out ourselves, but there is so much stigma, there's so much conditioning. I would say that kind of sex and money are really the two topics we don't even know how to start talking about in a relationship, right? So, I number one say that, you talked a little bit about full body orgasm and we can have it 12 times and it's all great, but I want to take away the end goal of the journey. Yeah, because that's often where it actually starts. And even this statement that we cannot come together, it's an interesting one, because that again puts the focus on coming and on the orgasm. Yeah. And then we kind of forget about everything else on the way. We often don't even look each other in the eyes. There's often no foreplay. We don't even exchange our desires. What is that you desire? Where are you at tonight before we make love? And we just care about the 5-second orgasm at the end. So first thing first, I would take away even the orgasm as an end goal. And really, what are our intentions? Do we just maybe want to connect tonight? Or maybe tonight we just want to cuddle? Or maybe tonight we just want to eye gaze? Or maybe I'm tired and I just want you to hold me in your arms and I want to fall asleep, right? So even starting with a conversation and asking yourself, where are you at today?
Thank you.
Asking a partner.
Yeah, thank you for saying that. I mean,
Not going into default.
well, and Sophie, you and I have had literally this discussion where Sophie would say, we'd be laying in bed and I would like cuddle up against her and I'd feel this tensing up. And it was the next day when we would talk about it, she would say, you know, I felt like if I turned around or if I gave into that attention, it would mean we have to have sex. And I just wasn't in the mood. And how different it is to be able to turn to your partner and just be able to say, hey, you know what? I'm totally down to cuddle and kiss, not in the mood to have sex. And then for the partner not to take it personally and not feel offended, but rather go, thank you so much for sharing with me what you want. Yeah. I'm not in this for that end goal. I think that's so important for people to keep in mind. I'm not cuddling up against you for an orgasm. I want the intimacy and the connection.
Totally. And you know, it's in the topic of performance goes on top of it, because with so many men, I have sessions and they say, yeah, but I feel like I have to perform. And then I always ask, what do you define as perform? And then often what comes up is the pornographic view of sexuality, where it's a lot of doing, where there's a lot of friction, a lot of thrusting, and just a workout on top of each other. And kind of women, when you ask them what they actually want, it's a completely different thing, right? But we have this kind of pre-constructed ideas of what the other wants, and we assume that's the case, right? So first things first, it's a journey, not a destination. So every little step, and we want to go step by step. We're not going to start with a full body orgasm. We first want to create safety. We want to create safety and connection. And that starts with asking your partner a question. Hey, how are you feeling today? Where are you at? What's alive for you? And then a second question would be, what are your desires for our intimacy session or for our time tonight together? What is that you want? What is that your desire? What would be ideal if you can choose how we can spend the next hour? And then both partners can share where they are at and what their desires are, right? So even having that conversation. Then another, and even actually, to say the step before that, creating a space and time for intimacy, okay? So quickies are great, but when we really kind of want to commit to something and we want to commit to creating intimacy and really connecting with the partner, I always say schedule the damn thing in the calendar. I know a lot of people resist that idea, but hey, we schedule a visit to a doctor, we schedule a cinema, we schedule a dinner with friends. We don't schedule intimate time with a partner.
Well, and Sophie and I, we've got 3 kids. And so scheduling is necessary, because if we don't make sure that somebody's watching the kids, there is no 30-minute intimacy session. There's no 1-hour intimacy session. Somebody knocks on the door within 4 minutes. And so I think it's...
I've seen your kids, yes.
Yes, they're very energetic. They're really, really energetic.
So, it sounds very basic, but trust me, I work with so many couples and most of them don't do that. So schedule something that is really realistic for you to execute on. So don't schedule 3 nights a week if it's not realistic, because you're not gonna happen and you're only gonna get discouraged. Maybe once a week, and if that's possible, once a month.
And I think for anyone that's listening that are moms or are dads, or not, maybe you're not parents, but you're just really busy and that sounds intimidating, and you're coming from a place where it's just like having it scheduled in. But even just having 1 or 2 kind of dates with your partner where, it is just intimacy time. That doesn't mean it has to be sex. And that's what I really like that Bibi is saying. It's like, it's just about connecting and not being distracted by other things, having that intentional time where you can just check in. Maybe it is that you want to just be held. And sometimes I do want that, but I don't ask for it. So that's when that can happen. Or maybe you do a check-in. Adi and I have a really lovely check-in that we offer. And it's just a way to feel close to your partner instead of being two passing ships. Yeah. And once you're connected and once you're aligned, maybe you don't even go into it with the end goal of having sex, but instead to just be intimate. And then after you check in or after you take a nap holding each other or whatever it is that helps you drop in, then maybe organically something will happen that's unexpected because you're so aligned.
Yes, exactly. Beautiful. And, and that's also when I start working with couples, we start with simple exercises and practices, and they don't need to lead to sex. So just taking away this pressure, it's also changes everything. Yeah. So after kind of checking in where we at, another really simple basic practice, which most couples don't do, is I call it tuning in. So I always like to ask people, imagine an orchestra. Before they play together, everyone is tuning in the instruments, right? We often want to play as a team, but often we don't tune into each other. What if you had a stressful day and your wife is coming from a 2-hour yoga class, right? Mm-hmm. How are we going to play as a team? We have to kind of sink in. And there's very beautiful, simple ways to do that. And you can sit on your bed or on the floor, either in yab-yam position or even cross-legged, touching knees and looking in the eyes. And let's just simply start breathing together. It's very simple, but so powerful. And just start inhaling and exhaling together. And I always say, creating a space, right? So we said about time, but also physically. So have the candles. I installed dimmers in all my bedrooms, okay? So the lighting for me is so important. Well, I have sensual music playing on. I have senses, right? So in this space, we're going to sit and we're going to start breathing together maybe for 1 or 2 songs. First, you can have your eyes closed. Then you can gently touch your foreheads and the third eye. Another song, breathing in together. And a third one, look at each other's left eye, which is the receptive eye, the eye of the soul, the soul. So beautiful connection. And we're going to see slowly your heartbeat, about 7 minutes at least, your heartbeats are going to start synchronizing. And then your breath together brings you it makes you feel like you're this one breathing organism. And from there, we can even start, sailing together. But that's so simple and so basic and so necessary.
Hey, we're interrupting this episode to talk to you about a new GoDaddy podcast that we're so excited to share with you.
It's called School of Hustle, and in it, you're going to hear real stories from entrepreneurs who are building the businesses of their dreams and everything that it takes to get it done.
This is so important to us because we've founded and run several businesses, and hearing stories from other entrepreneurs has been our saving grace along this journey. It's how we've avoided a lot of unnecessary mistakes and learned from others who have had success.
You can go right now and listen and subscribe on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to podcasts to get real strategies that you can use to help your business thrive. Now go hustle.
I want to bring up the communication piece, because what we find when we work with couples is that even people who have been together for 10 years, 15 years, they don't communicate their needs. And it is so important to, where are you today? What would you like? And if it's too kind of woo-woo or weird, anything that Bibi's saying, like, what's your desire? If that seems crazy to you, start somewhere. Just check in with each other and just find an honest. And the more honest, the more that you can use your voice, especially women, to just say, I actually don't love that. Can you do it this way? And offer something, not just, I don't like that, but instead,
absolutely.
This is what I like instead. Yeah.
So I want to, I want to give one exercise if there are couples listening, and it's a little bit more brave one. So, it's a very powerful one, and it's going to take some of the couples out of the comfort zone.
We like that.
Yeah, we like that, right? And the exercise is the following. You are going, once you already breathe together and you're more intimate and you feel more connected, you are going to put an alarm for 5 minutes. So each of you is going to have exactly 5 minutes. And watch. So you are going to name your genitals. You are going to give a name. A woman gives a name to her pussy, to her yoni. Okay. And man gives a name to the penis. I know it might be a little, it might sound a little strange for some people, but just giving it a name has a certain connection. And it can be, my yoni is named the Temple of the Rose, and it's a temple. And so you can give them beautiful names and something even symbolic. So it can be kinky, but it can be also sacred, whatever resonates with you. And then we are going to give our genitals a voice. Okay. And that's why it's a very powerful exercise, because if you kind of speak as it instead of I, it kind of takes away the seriousness and the heaviness away from this. So let's say, for me, my yoni is going to speak for 5 minutes how she likes to be touched, how she likes to be stimulated, what she likes. So I'm going to give you an example. The Temple of the Rose would say, I like to be teased. I like to be asked for permission before entering me. I like to be touched softly and massaged with the use of the coconut oil. I like very gentle and slow strokes. I like to be penetrated only when I'm really, really lubricated. Never before that. Do you see my point?
Yeah.
So for 5 minutes, you are giving your yoni a voice. The other partner is just listening. And after 5 minutes, you're going to switch. Okay. And the person listening is just listening, not jumping in, confirming, criticizing, or whatever, just receives. And this 5 minutes sounds a little long, but it's on purpose, because you're going to run out of the obvious things and you're going to start scratching deeper. Guys, this exercise, trust me, I work sometimes with couples who have been married for 20 or 25 years, and they never had this kind of conversation. I actually had a couple this week who has done this exercise first time ever in their marriage. It's so simple, but it's so powerful. And it really is a beautiful way. So we're only going to talk what works and what we like. So there's no criticism. There's no crushing ego. There is focusing on the positive. And number one, for each partner, realizing what their desires are and creating a safe container to communicate them. So for me, that's a beautiful exercise.
I love it. Well, I feel like we're going to do that and then report back to everybody on what our lessons were. You've mentioned time twice, and I want to get back to something you taught us in the lesson. So you mentioned initially about 7 minutes of breathing together while listening to music. And now you mentioned 5 minutes each. So that's 10 minutes of talking about what your sexual organs want and like what turns you on and what makes you feel good, right? For a guy, what makes you hard, for a woman, what makes you wet, right? Like that's as intimate as most partners have ever gotten, period. And it brings up this conversation we had during our session that I think is important for everybody to listen to. You mentioned that for a woman, the average amount of time that it takes to get to the place where she's really ready to be entered, really ready to have full sex and get to this place of like a full body orgasm is on the order of like 35, 40 minutes, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
But,
so,
but you mentioned, if I remember right, you mentioned that the average length of a sex session, beginning to end, like from I started touching you to I orgasmed and we're done, is 7 minutes.
No, that's less than that, actually. So I think, there's different research around it, but on average, apparently nowadays, men ejaculate with between 3-4 minutes of a penetration, right? And there's definitely less than 5 minutes of a foreplay. So we're talking about 7 minutes altogether, okay? On average, yes.
So that's that's like a 35-minute gap before we should have gotten started.
Exactly, but we live in this fast-paced society. It's a little bit like eating junk food, it's fast, but it doesn't really nurture you, and you're hungry, an hour after. So a little bit.
I love that analogy.
Well, right? So yes, we kind of, and I always say that's why we need to schedule time, and I would schedule at least 2 hours. Because if you combine expressing your desires with breathing, maybe a massage, and all the longer foreplay, you want to have time for this. And, what excuses do we have today in the lockdowns, in the pandemic? We spend with partners 24/7 at home. So why not to use this to really have quality time to connect? So in 2 hours a week, if doesn't, to me, it's doable, really. Yeah. So that number 2, we talked about the fact that kind of a man and a woman are in a way opposite in their sexual response. So man is in his genitals an active penetrative force. Our vagina receives the penis inside of us, right? We are receptive in our sexual organs, and receptivity takes time. So I always say women really need to first to trust so they can fully relax, so they can really surrender, so they can then open up to a full yes for penetration. There's a lot of things for us women. We really need to truly let go and surrender, so we can really go into this, deeper orgasmic states. And listen, if you look at the older texts of, and older teachers of tantric sex, they talk more about 45 minutes to an hour. Okay, modern teachers and neo-tantra teachers, it's more a conversation about 20 minutes. But I would say 20 minutes is an absolute minimum, and the longer the better. And I know it might sound ridiculous, but when you even look at the old way of the art of lovemaking, it was about the man worshiping the goddess to a point that she is in tears begging him to penetrate and enter her. And only then he would just slide in a little bit and slide out, and a little bit more and out. Yeah, so this is really when the woman is ready to be penetrated, when she is asking you for that.
Yeah.
When she's really open and surrendered.
Yeah, I like what you said about the fast food, and it really is the same concept. It's just like, it like satisfies the thing in the moment, but it's not hitting those deep desires. Exactly. It's not actually hitting those deep desires, especially for the woman.
Yes, especially for us.
Yeah, well, you want that organic heirloom sex, not the fast food sex. I love this. I love this analogy.
You farm to table. You farm to table.
You want the farm to table sex. No, you know what I love about this analogy is like, because sex is so taboo to talk about. Look, that exercise you mentioned goes beyond the one that we've done with couples before, which is like, why don't you turn to your partner and tell them what you like in bed? And I totally get the flip of making your sexual organs do the conversation. It might take a little leap to start getting there, but at least then it depersonalizes the conversation a little bit, which is really, really nice. But if that's hard, then how difficult is it for people to show up fully for this intimate experience and not take it personally and listen to what their partner wants and then not make it about them? Like, all these things are not part of, you said, anything we learn about sexuality. I think most men learn about sex from porn. Some women learn about it also.
I learned from sex from porn too. You know?
And so that's just not. It's not a real. It's like watching Superman and going like, oh, I should go outside and fly. It's not relevant to your reality at all.
Well, it's like McDonald's being nutrition. It's the same idea.
Yeah, exactly. And there's and if that exercise that I mentioned can be a little bit outside of the listener's comfort zone, you can start, before you even start with the genitals, start for 5 minutes talking about in general what you like. So you might even start talking, hey, I like candlelight. I like slow and sensual massage. I like to be whispered to my ear. I like my neck to be licked. I like my feet to be massaged. So we can even start with that before we go to the genitals. So this could be a first session. But this idea also of a good lover, because what pornography does, it kind of, enforces a certain stereotype of what a good lover is. And it's the man who is thrusting a lot and he's fast and he's kind of furious and can go forever. But what does even a good lover mean? Each of us likes something else. So instead of hoping for a good lover, and it's both for men and women, we need to guide the partner. So how are they going to guess what we like? Instead of guessing, we can just communicate it. It needs to be communicated in a positive, loving, and gentle way. So I always say focusing on what works. This is what I really like. This is what I really enjoyed. But we need to help the partners to figure out what is it that we like, so we can, in a way, train a person to be a good lover for us.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay. So I want to focus in on something here because this just kind of came to me as you were saying that. Different people have different flavors, different things that they like. Just like with ice cream, right? We were sitting outside one day with our friends, and everybody asked what different people's ice cream flavors are. Everybody had a different flavor. It was like
Absolutely.
9 people, 9 different flavors. Our friend who said vanilla, everybody like turned on. That's it. That's the thing. You're like, people were making fun of other people for ice cream flavors. So when it comes to sex, some people like being dominant. Some people like being more submissive. Some people like having somebody kind of take charge, and other people want it to be more equal. Like, there are all these nuances. You've worked with a lot of couples, especially around the sexual stuff. And so what I want to ask is, obviously, some of this more niche, more taboo stuff to talk about can be shameful for partners to bring to their loved one, their lover, if they haven't gotten really, really comfortable with. What are some tips that you have for people to really be as transparent and honest in that conversation? Because in the end, you're looking for the best sexual experience that you can have with your partner. If you're going to guide them, you want to guide them towards your true desires.
Yeah. So, there's definitely needs to be a certain level of trust and connection. And some of the practices that we talked about can create that safety space. And I personally usually start with the question, what is that you like? I ask the partner, what is it that you like? What are your favorites? What is the favorite way to stimulate you? How do you like to be touched? What are the positions that you enjoy most? And once you give the voice to your partner, then you can say, okay, that resonates. And this is what I personally like. These are my favorites, right? So you're not coming from a perspective of, I want to enforce my views on you and my wants, but you're also curious, genuinely curious about other person. If you start with asking the question and being authentic and genuine in discovering what they like, and they are being heard, then it's going to be more easy for you to express your own desires, right? And then we both come for a place of, here I am. I am interested in what you like, and I also want to share what works for me.
Are there places where people have these deep conversations and find, have you worked with couples where the compatibility is tough? Because when you hear the other person share and you give them that space, you find out that maybe what they really want is not something that you've, at least in the past, been really comfortable giving or receiving. And then I think this is really important. You mentioned sex and money are 2 of the main things couples have a hard time talking about. They also happen to be 2 of the top 3 things couples break up over. So we've got to figure out a way to bridge that gap. What if you hear things that are triggering to you, or hear things that make you feel uncomfortable or in some other way unsafe?
Yeah. To be honest with you, I would first check in with myself. What is it that makes me uncomfortable? Why is it triggering me? So instead of making it about the partner and what's wrong with them, or why am I not liking what they like, why is this triggering me? Okay. So that's, a partner is always a mirror, and it's a reflection, and it's a way for you to take your personal growth to another level. And is it in sex? It is about money. In anything you're going to talk about, maybe religion, maybe the way you want to bring up your kids. You are not going to agree on everything. Same with sexuality, right? So if your partner is, if what your partner is sharing is triggering you, it's really a great question to ask yourself, okay, why is it triggering me? What's behind it? How come my response to this is this way? Yeah, so that's number 1. Number 2, I would honestly check in with myself, because there are things like, maybe your partner likes to have a light on and you want to have a candle on, and it's a small thing. Or maybe there's something much bigger. Maybe your partner likes, orgies and you are not into it. So that's kind of a bigger, hurdle to overcome. So really honestly checking within your values and values of your relationship. Is this aligned with kind of a bigger picture of your relationship and the values that you both share? Because that's important, right? If sexual orgy is a preference of your partner, but your values are really being monogamous and being exclusive, then that's kind of there's a serious topic to be discussed, right? So I would look at the bigger picture. And then third, I would be honest about being uncomfortable. Because really, you know, the more honest, vulnerable, and transparent we are, and that's how I would say, you know, it's interesting. I wouldn't even expect it myself. But when you share the desire, I felt uncomfortable. My heart started beating, my hands started sweating, and it's interesting to observe, even for me, what a level of discomfort your sharing caused. So I want to admit that, and I want to share that, and I want to talk about that.
I love it. I love it. That's so great. It falls right in line with our radical transparency way of talking about things.
Yeah.
Look, you know, it's so funny. When we did a session with you, it was 3 hours. I feel like we could easily spend 3 hours talking about this. And I have a feeling this won't be the last time we have this conversation. But I want to get us to talking about these 5 questions that we ask all of our guests. And I think maybe because we're on the topic of sex, let's keep these, if it resonates, to the topic of sexuality, intimacy, tantra, all that kind of stuff. When you think of the first answer to the question, what is the best advice you've ever received? What comes up for you?
You know what? There's a few, but I was dating just after I quit my job, and I was in this transition period. I was lucky enough to meet a very conscious man. And he was also a life coach, just for fun. And we were dating for a few years, and he gave me so many advices that I could write a book. He really gave me the wings to fly. And a very simple thing, but really stuck with me, that I create my own reality. I really do. And I know it's, you know, it sounds easy and obvious, but to put it in practice, it's a whole another level. And when we started dating, I was leaving the corporate world, and it was tough. But I really asked myself, what reality do I want to live? How do I want to live my life? And then really believing, not only speaking it out, but really believing it and just going for it. And I really create my own reality. I created my business. I created living in nature. I create living a life without an alarm clock. And so on and so on. And it just continues to be this way. And if I am not content with something, just really change it. As simple as that. Change it, negotiate. So simple, but
love it.
Powerful.
Very powerful.
So powerful.
What about one of your proudest moments to date?
Good. I didn't see those questions in advance, so I'm just really speaking.
Good.
Yes, good.
Good. I'm really speaking honestly. What is the moment that I am the most proud of? You know what? I would say let's when I started teaching. I think the best big group when I gave a workshop, and when people really had profound experiences, when some people had their first full body orgasm, when some people experienced energy for the first time, or had beautiful breakthroughs. And this was kind of, for me, a realization. This is what I want to do. I want to be of service, and this fills me up so much. I sometimes call it masturbating on gratitude.
I love it. Masturbating on gratitude.
Good. When people when you see that you are of value, when you are a catalyst, and that's, guys, what you are focusing on and what you are doing as well. And I'm sure you resonate with that. And really, I think that it was one of the first workshops, and I really had that realization that this is my life, mate. This is the purpose that I was looking for. Oh, so good. It was this kind of two things aligned, and that was, some people look for purpose and mission all life long, and I think it all really starts with something outside of yourself. And service, and I was proud. I was proud of myself to kind of have this realization, to be out there, to start doing those workshops, and just putting all the dots together.
Do you, after kind of thinking about the proudest moment, do you then think about what your hardest moment was, like in retrospect?
My hardest moment was my little midlife crisis that I mentioned. I was 30 something. It was my last year in corporate world. Well, I didn't know it was last year, but, and I was living in Sao Paulo. And for the first time in my life, I kind of, all distractions stripped, and I was clueless. What the hell am I going to do with my life? I don't like my job. I don't like the place I'm living in. I'm single. I'm not getting any younger. I'm like clueless what my next steps are. And it was scary. And I was quite lonely there too. I kind of never found fully my tribe and far away from my family. And it was kind of difficult also because I first time realized that when you're really negative, when you're really in this low vibration space, you only attract difficult situations. So I was attracting a lot of challenges left and right. And it's kind of this vicious circle. And I first time experienced, and I remember that day, it was raining, it was a Sunday, and I kind of didn't want to get out of bed. I didn't want to wake up and start the day. And this was really scary. And it's kind of not easy to get out of that circle, vicious circle. So I think that was the most challenging moment. But again, those most challenging moments, if you ask me what my most transformational moment was or most important one that defined where I am today, it's the same one.
Yeah.
So true.
Right? Yeah.
So true. Well, in that context, so you're in this helping world as well. And doing this sort of work is incredibly gratifying, but also takes a lot. Because when you do service work and you're constantly helping people, you're also taking some of their friction and pain and stress and anxieties on as you do it. What is some of the self-care routine that you have to have in place on a daily basis to make sure that you're serving yourself to be able to serve others?
That's a good one. Especially in times where so many people need help and the business is booming, right? You know what? And I'm going to say, since we're staying with the sexuality topic, self-pleasure practices, self-pleasure, high vibration masturbation, or self-love. You can give different names to it. But it's really, it's I would say one of my top and favorite ones that combines spirituality, sexuality, all in one. And I schedule it. There's at least 1 hour a week in my calendar when I do a longer self-pleasure practice. And they are really energizing and they are releasing and they are all things in one. Okay, so that is one of the top of my list. A short JDEG practice in the morning. I meditate every day. I practice yoga 3 times a week. So definitely movement for me is super important. And there are some certain energy rituals where you kind of protect yourself and your energy field with intentions, with calling in the guardian angels and certain rituals and, even simple smudging or cleansing the room that I am seeing the clients in, for example.
Yeah.
So I would say those are the top. And really, and something that you promote so much as well, staying healthy, it really comes all together. So I'm going to share, I stopped drinking alcohol 4 years ago, and I don't drink alcohol. I sleep. I don't do overnight things anymore. I really sleep 7.5 hours because that's where I feel my best. And all those little things that I really live by. And that's where you really are more vital. And that's where it's easier to protect yourself from other people's energies, where you become more radiant and, beaming your energy and light out instead of absorbing the darkness or challenges from others. That's how it's
really knowing yourself and learning over time what works for you and what doesn't, just like we're talking about with sex. But you need to know yourself. You need to know what you like, what you don't like in all things so that you can be more in that alignment and then keep attracting the goodness in your life so it keeps expanding.
Yeah. And I'm just going to add, because maybe some of the listeners are wondering what the hell the high vibration masturbation is. What does it even mean, right? So it's not porn. It's not the dildos. It's really combining all things that we talked about. Breath. It's, I take a bath. I dance, I shake, I give myself a breast massage, I do a breathing, and then I slowly and gently stimulate. I don't go for the orgasm. I really kind of bring my arousal level up, and I might use jade egg or a crystal wand, and I'm gonna ride the wave of pleasure. So I ride on that wave for about an hour. I actually also get so creative that sometimes I have to pause and note down all the ideas, because that's where the creativity just flows through me. And having this time nowhere specifically to go, just having at least an hour to play with myself, and not even striving for the orgasm. Sometimes there's no orgasm at the end. I'm just moving energy and enjoying being with myself. And this is kind of, this is what really nurtures me and energizes me.
Yeah. Well, that's self-care at its best, is figuring out how to be with yourself and love being with yourself, that's who you have forever, is that person. So
that sounds like a hell of a practice, an hour riding that wave. I mean, especially for somebody who, for the whole life, it was like this, the goal is the orgasm, especially like we mentioned around porn. That's a practice by itself.
And I actually now I am in the middle of my online course for women, and I teach them. And I have, in the pandemic, that was one of the kind of creative projects that I birthed. And I recorded a whole series of guided self-pleasure practices with music, breath, and literally everything. So I'm really literally teaching women how to self-pleasure in a conscious, loving way.
It's beautiful.
And it's also because some people say, who the hell has one hour to do this, and how does this work? Well, it's a timeless space, because you enter in higher states of consciousness. The time doesn't exist anymore. It doesn't feel like an hour. And some people say, well, who the hell has time for this? You are energizing yourself. You are relaxing. There's so much goodness that you do to yourself that it's really worth to invest this 1 hour. And you're going to be much more nurtured than watching a TV series for an hour doing this. So worth investing.
Beautiful. Our podcast is called Ignited. What ignites you the most?
What ignites me the most? That's a good question. There's a lot of things, but I think, learning and growing. This is really, and it comes up with in all my readings, from Jinkies to human design, and even me really looking what really ignites me more. It's really learning and growing and becoming a better person. And this is something that I thrive on. This is something that I look for in a relationship, in a partner. This is one of the top things that I want to share with a partner. And
beautiful.
I love it.
We echo that.
It makes me high. And
that's why we have this podcast. It started out by just telling our story. And really, we just love hearing other people's walks of life and their stories. We love learning. We bring people on that we are inspired by, because we want to spend an hour going deep with that person. And then, just like you, we love to share with our communities. So absolutely. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
And I love the podcasts, guys. And I love the podcasts. There's a huge traffic now in Tulum, and what a great way for me to always listen to one podcast one way. And and couples, you're definitely on the top. There is couples that thrive together and co-create together. And have such a beautiful energy. It's inspiring.
Thank
you. We love it.
Thanks for being a part of it and helping us along our way.
My pleasure.
We'll have you back again. Now you're a part of the Ignited family. So we'll have you guys on. Maybe we'll have you on for a live on our Instagram. We'll figure it out, but maybe we'll get a mini workshop. Yeah.
Yes.
I love it. So obviously, thank you for joining us. And for those of you listening right now, I always ask you to do this, like pause for a moment and think of the lessons you learned, right? If you can pause right now, take a screenshot of this, share what it is that landed for you. Your brain will remember it better. You'll be able to apply it better. So whether it's a challenge Bibi gave you, or one of the exercises, or just one of her answers, any story that we shared, tag Bibi, tag us, and let us know what worked for you. And obviously, if you love this kind of content, subscribe, share it with other people close to you. Maybe share it with your partner, so you both can have a sex conversation tonight from a place you've never done it before.
And I get so many partners ask me, how do I introduce this to my partner when they hear about it? Well, this podcast is a beautiful way to introduce it to your partner.
Agreed.
Just listen to it together with a glass of wine, or maybe a turmeric latte.
I love it.
And that's how you can introduce it to your partner. So
perfect. Well, we adore you. Mwah.
Yes.
See you
Thank
soon.
You guys so much.
We will come to you next.
Yes. And if anyone wants to reach me, I think you're going to probably
we're going to
me.
give all your links and everything that they need for you. Thank you so much,
we
Bibi.
Can continue spreading. Sending you lots of love, guys.
Happy
so
holidays.
much love.
Bye.
Ciao, ciao.
Thank you, everybody, for listening to the Ignited podcast. We were so happy to have you along for this ride. Please go and subscribe to this. Leave us a review. We love hearing from you. And if you want more, don't forget to go to ignited.com, where all the podcast episodes are available with show notes and so many of the little details and links from each one of these interviews. And you can look at all the future events that we have going on, all the things that make Ignited so special, even beyond this recording. Again, thank you so much for joining us. We will see you next week.